CBR, we meet again. I've missed you. It ends tonight. I can't believe that I'm going down a road of becoming known for debunking CBR articles, and I kind of hate it because I keep trying to find something else to talk about as far as other lists on other websites. And as much as I sometimes disagree with Screen Rant, at least their takes are 99% of the time defensible. But like CBR always puts out these lists like this one, 20 things that make no sense about Arkham Asylum, that I just have so many issues with in terms of finding holes. So, we're going to cover this, go through each of them, and I'm going to give my take on each of them, my reaction, if you will, what I agree with, what I disagree with. Please do not contact the author of this post. Do not contact the website. This is for our entertainment use on YouTube, and I'd like to keep it there. So let's jump into it. This whole article is talking about 20 things that make no sense about Batman Arkham Asylum, as I'm sure you can tell. So we're going to skip the whole explanation here because it's not really that important and just go through the list. The first is the villain's costume, number 20. Generally, when someone is admitted to an institution for criminal rehab, you don't get to wear your own clothes. This is true. This is why it's baffling how all of Batman's villains somehow have their traditional garb here. Okay, so here's my issue first off. They point out that Joker's being booked as he's brought in. So yes, he's left in his traditional outfit. You are right, that makes sense, and that's not a complaint here from the CBR article. But the issue here is that there aren't actually that many villains in Batman Arkham Asylum anyway. So if we run through some of them right now, Killer Croc is actually just in inmate pants. He's not actually in an outfit. I mean, I suppose if you call his skin an outfit, sure, but they're not going to slap a shirt on Killer Croc, especially with his medical issues that he's developing during this time. So they just cover his area and put a collar on him and send him on his way. Other than him, Bane is wearing his outfit. Yes, sort of. It's a mashup. I mean, they have the mask on him, but he's being pumped for Venom and Titan, obviously underneath the asylum. So he's kept off secret anyway, and it kind of makes sense why he's there. You can nitpick the mask part, I guess, but I don't think that really matters, especially the way his face looks. Maybe they just didn't want to look at it. Then there's Poison Ivy. Well, here's the thing with Poison Ivy. I don't have a huge defense of this one, but the thing with her is, considering how into naturalism she is, they're probably lucky they got her wearing anything at all. So it probably would be a fight to try to get her to wear something else. And I know we've seen depictions of her where she is in a traditional inmate garb, but for the sake of argument, I think this is a bit of a nitpick. I suppose that's the one that I'll give them is if you want to make a list and say Poison Ivy's still wearing clothes, why? Sure, I guess that's a problem with the game. Maybe they'll fix it in a patch or something. So the next one we have is the Riddler's puzzles, and this one has a huge flaw. Look, we get it, Riddler's one clever cat, blah, blah, blah. Everyone knows that about him. So the idea essentially is that maybe all of Arkham's guards are on lunch every time, that he's setting up his riddles. Here's the problem with this. Throughout the entire Arkham series after this, it's shown that Riddler is working with corrupt cops. It is shown that Riddler has people on payroll all the way through the end of Arkham Knight. This is never a new thing for Riddler. He's never out there doing it himself, really. It seems like he always has thugs on payroll. He always has cops on payroll. And I don't understand why, if he's able to buy out actual law enforcement officers, why it would be a stretch to say that he could buy out, probably poorly paid asylum guards at a very dangerous mental institution. It seems like that's kind of a no-brainer. Batman's modus operandi. This whole thing breaks down to the fact that he doesn't realize what the Joker's up to the whole time. They call it pig-headedness, and I suppose you could sort of say this anytime that Batman is fooled by the Joker if you really want to. That's part of Joker not being predictable, even by Batman. He's kind of outside of the realm of logical thinking. I mean, his plan's pretty nuts anyway. If you really break it down, his plan in Arkham Asylum breaks down to essentially manipulating the entire prison staff, asylum staff, I guess, even though this is pretty much a prison, over and over until he eventually is going to get into, he's trying to Titanize Commissioner Gordon and then himself, and then he ends up titanizing Batman. I mean, he's supposed to be really brilliant, and that's part of the yin and the yang, is that even though he's so brilliant, his mind is logic-based, whereas Joker's isn't. So the Scarecrow's fear toxin. I'm not trying to put like words in the author's mouth here. I'm just trying to break it down without reading word for word what they say every time. But the question here is, how did he get his hands on all the fear toxin undetected? There's crooked guards. Okay, so here's another problem. The author here admits that there's obviously crooked guards. So one, why wouldn't those tie into the Riddler aspect from before? Like, why wouldn't they be, setting up the riddles? And on top of that, why wouldn't the crooked guards also be helping smuggle Scarecrow's stuff in? And on top of that, this is a facility where there's constant breakouts. I mean, is it really a stretch to think that someone who worked there, Crane, was able to smuggle in elements of his toxin and actually have an operation going here? I mean, we even see that in movies like Batman Begins. This all sort of comes back to corruption. I mean, so you say, does no one look at the cameras once in a while? Well, a facility like this, what do you have? Maybe like 2-3 people at a time manning a security station watching cameras. If they're all on the payroll, it doesn't even matter anyway. So next up, we have Arkham Knight's whereabouts. I have a big issue with this because it's criticizing something for a retcon later, and a retcon that people already criticize anyway, so it's a bit of a cheap shot. But regardless, what they're doing here is going with the fact that during Arkham Asylum, Jason should have been chained up in the asylum, and that's shown actually in some of the events in things like Batman Arkham Genesis. It's Batman Arkham Knight Genesis, comic book series in the canon. And their whole point is, okay, so where is he? And this actually is it actually is covered in the comics as well. Essentially, he worked with Deathstroke and convinced Slade to actually help him get off of Arkham Island, sort of around the events of this game. But this is the problem, is that this is all retconned and it's side stuff anyway, outside of what's going on with Batman. And Batman very clearly had his hands full. Batman was not looking for Jason Todd. He wasn't like, oh, this guy who died a while ago, I wonder if he's here alive. That was never on his mind. I mean, to Batman, Jason Todd was dead for a long time at this point, so it's not like he was looking for him. I don't know. I don't think Arkham Knight was in a position to go after Batman. So they say, why didn't the Arkham Knight strike Batman while the perfect opportunity was there to take him down? The perfect opportunity wasn't there to take him down. Jason had just survived months of brutal torture. I mean, like, you're not in any physical condition to do so. This doesn't make any sense. Next up, where were Robin and Nightwing? Do I even need to address this? Batman keeps them at such an arm's length in this entire series. It's no wonder they don't just leave him completely forever. Bane's presence. Here's the problem with Bane's presence. Prior to the game's events, he was captured and brought to Arkham Asylum by Penelope Young to study the effects of venom on him. Blah, blah, blah. Considering that he is probably the smartest, well, but that's the problem, is that he's not anymore. He would never be captured by anyone. That's not even true anymore, though, because he suffers pretty severe brain damage during Arkham Origins, and some of it impairs his memory, but it was also WB Games Montreal's answer to why Bane is a moron in the Rocksteady trilogy, why he's not that intelligent anymore, why he doesn't really seem to know anything, and why he's constantly beaten by Batman in the dumbest strategies possible. I mean, like, Batman's brain has to be operating at 1% every time he beats Bane in the Rocksteady games. Maybe. I mean, like, probably 99% of it is out to lunch in his head with Selena Kyle, and 1%'s focusing on Bane. So, Bane's presence in the game doesn't really seem to be an issue. The message screens in the asylum. Oh boy, we're really digging now. For the most part, Arkham Asylum is actually a dump, sure. Looks like it could use a fresh coat of paint. Yeah, that's part of what's going on here and part of what happens with Arkham City. Yet on the screens in the asylum, there's high-tech screens that play messages from Quincy Sharp and other doctors discussing mental health and the history of Arkham. So they're saying that this isn't Jurassic Park. Why would they have these messages in the asylum? So here's the one thing that I will present, is that there are different Batman continuities, And I don't believe it's ever specifically addressed in the Arkham continuity, but there's this idea that people can check themselves into a mental institution. I mean, if you went up to an asylum and you were a raving lunatic and you couldn't form a coherent sentence, you probably could get admitted, or at least you could go and they would ship you off to be psychologically evaluated and sent somewhere. There's also visitations. So they say, like, why would you want to go to a tour? There is a lot of corruption with Quincy Sharp anyway. I mean, I don't think that's ever in question. Also, Quincy Sharp seems to be a guy who likes stroking his own ego all the time. It's not a surprise to me that he wants to hear himself talk on TV in the building where he works. So next up, we have Penelope Young's role. Oh, we're getting in the story now. You know Penelope Young's intentions regarding they might have been pure at heart. She went about it the wrong way, sure. Instead, she tested it to uncover the effects of venom and to make Titan. She broke several medical oaths and Arkham Asylum's premises. I guess, why does this not make sense, though? Like, has there never been a doctor who has broken the Hippocratic Oath? There have been doctors who have killed their patients out of essentially this moral code of like thinking they're helping them. And that's not the only example of it. There's a lot of them, a lot of prolific, I believe they're called serial killers, but it's a weird way of going about it, who have done this sort of thing. I mean, it's not a stretch to think that a doctor could do something evil just because they took an oath. All right, what do we got here? The secret Batcave. Why does this make no sense? Batman is resourceful. Basically, how did he manage to build it unnoticed? I feel like this is a cop-out, but this all really comes back to money. And no one's saying because he's Batman. I do like the meme there. And part of me wonders if this whole thing is bait because of it. But even if it is, we're going to bait the baiters because I am the master of baiting. Yeah. Wait, whoa, uh-oh. We better move on here. I don't know. Don't want to get demonetized for that. So how did he manage to get it built without being noticed? Well, there is sort of a question of, was this cave always here? If so, which is very, very possible, he very easily could have renovated part of it. Bruce Wayne is probably the wealthiest man in that entire state, let alone just in Gotham. I mean, he definitely has the resources to get in there and do that. And who's to say that he wasn't being watched? I mean, let's say that Bruce Wayne were to pay for a partial renovation of the asylum. Well, he could easily take care of this during that. Shoddy security. Yeah, this is one that's always been bad, by the way, and I actually agree with them on this. There's so many holes in the structural plan of Arkham Asylum. Well, and that's part of the problem, too, is that essentially Arkham Asylum is somewhere where these criminals are shipped off to be forgotten. Nobody cares about them. Really, people just care that they're out of the spotlight for a few days, and that's about it. That's part of the reason why they sort of switched from Blackgate to Arkham Asylum and then Arkham City. I mean, this is all escalation to try to stop a systemic problem, treating symptoms. And Arkham Asylum is terrible, but you can sort of see that Quincy Sharp is working on what he also believes is going to be the solution to that in Arkham City. All the villains in one place. Gotham City is undoubtedly the hub of psychopaths and criminals, so why do you keep them all under one roof? Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, I think people have always mocked the Arkham Asylum idea for that, but that's also sort of like saying in a maximum security state prison, why do you keep all these dangerous people in one prison? You have all these people under one roof already. I mean, this is a prison system problem. I'm not surprised that that exists in fiction. The Titan production. So a lot of people have things, certain types of labs, which I don't want to say and trigger some code words on YouTube. And no one knows until there's a police tip-off. Sure, that's true. So it's a bit of a head-scratcher when you think about how Joker could have organized a Titan production facility in the botanical gardens of Arkham Asylum without being noticed. Again, all these people are very obviously on payroll. There's very few honest people working at Arkham Asylum. So there must be shift guards doing their rounds. Surely someone would have spotted something in place of the botanical gardens. Maybe. Useless guards. So you have to feel for Jim Gordon, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so here's the thing. These guards are very likely never having to deal with something like this. I mean, the whole point of them is just to escort these criminals into lockup, essentially, and then they stay there. They never pull them all out at the same time. It doesn't make any sense why they would have to deal with a breakout of this magnitude. They allow themselves to be bribed easily by psychopaths, like that's going to turn out well. How many people are criminally inclined in the real world? I mean, they're not allowing anything. They're making an active decision to be a bad person, to be a crummy individual and accept money from someone terrible because money is money. That's not really about allowing anything. I mean, there's hundreds of people obviously breaking out here, including some of Batman's most dangerous rogues, and you think that Aaron One-Hand Cash is going to go up and solo take down Poison Ivy and Joker? What are we talking about here? What are we getting at? Killer Croc's lair. Killer Croc is not the smartest villain around, but why would they put him in the sewers? Well, it seemed like the sewers were actually basically capped off. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense to just leave him down there forever. So why didn't he just escape in the sewers? Even if the sewers don't lead out too far of Arkham, it allows him the opportunity to go outside of the asylum's walls. And again, this is assuming that these are not capped off. I mean, how do we know that? How do we know that there's no cap off here? The swim wouldn't be too much of a stretch for him? Sure. Fine. But if we're going to make the assumption that why couldn't he just get out in the sewers, I'm going to make the assumption of why do you not think the sewers would be capped off on one of the most dangerous islands in existence, probably in this fictional world? Two-Face's freedom. As we find out in Arkham Asylum, he's been transformed into Two-Face. His cell can be found in the penitentiary. However, he's not there. He's out and about robbing a bank. So Road to Arkham confirms he's hospitalized due to a previous encounter with Batman. So that means he escaped from the hospital. Who was watching him? We can ask these questions until the sun comes up. At the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is just there are not the resources to handle these criminals, obviously, in this world. That's why Batman exists. No Batman surveillance. Batman's as paranoid as they come. He doesn't trust the Justice League. He's set up contingency plans. This is why it's hard to believe there's no surveillance in Arkham. Well, he clearly did have surveillance, but he was there. And by the time that he was able to act, he was sealed off in away from Joker and had to sort of make his way past armed thugs. I mean, it's not like he's going to have his own private security force on Arkham Island. The vigilante in the asylum, so why do they allow him to go in here? Well, at this point, it's essentially the fact that there's no way to enforce the law in Gotham. I mean, Gotham's a broken police state almost at this point. I mean, they need Batman. And this is something that's come up before of why is Batman allowed to function alongside police officers? And it really does come back to that idea, other than just saying it's fiction, get over it. It does come back to the idea that essentially these are people who can't do their job. They can't. They don't have the resources to control this war zone of a city. I mean, if anything, the U.S. military should be in here declaring martial law and putting all these people down, but they're not. And part of that is probably because the DC universe is kind of crazy anyway. They'd have to be all over the place. Star City, Central City. They would have to be in Metropolis even, although Superman does at least a decent job there, keeping things intact. But they're saying it's reckless that they would allow Batman in here. And sure it is. He is a liability. But the thing is that at this point in time, he's very established. I mean, he has brought in these criminals so many times. His identity, his reputation is not in question from anybody, whether that's Jim Gordon or the police force in general. It was back in Origins, but it's not now. It's been long enough. He's been around the block. They know who he is. He's generally trusted by people. So moving on, no tabs on Harley Quinn. At the time of Batman Arkham Asylum, it's common knowledge that they were in a relationship. She was his accomplice. By not keeping tabs on Harley, the Dark Knight and Jim Gordon were blindsided by Joker's plan. So this also assumes that Batman should have eyes on every single member of the Rogues Gallery at all times, which is not possible for someone who's just a man anyway. If there is another actual in-lore reason for this one, though, no tabs on Harley Quinn, I'd love it if you would tell me in the comments down below. I'm not actually sure if there is or not, but we will move on to number 1, the easy escape plan. So this is the idea that it's on an island. You could just swim. So like they're saying they could build a raft out of items and make their way back to Gotham. Sure, but all of these people are sort of following Joker's orders anyway. And on an average day, they're not trying to escape. And in fact, Joker is not trying to escape here. He very clearly could have gotten off of the asylum at some point in the game. He doesn't try to. That's not part of his plan, at least during the core plan. So, I don't really think there is an escape plan that needed speaking of. I mean, no one's trying to escape really yet. That's not the point. They're trying to kill Batman and enact Joker's plan, and then I'm sure they'd want to escape the actual thug underlings, but Joker doesn't really expect to kill Batman here anyway, and in fact, if he did, he'd be pretty lost without him. So what do you think about it in the comments down below? I am interested to hear your take. What do you think about my take? Was it good? Was it bad? And how do you like these videos? I'm trying to mix in some gameplay now. I've gotten some feedback that you don't always like looking at the static screen. But these are also sort of a break for me from some of the heavy edited videos so that I can take longer with those while still providing you with quality content you enjoy. So let me know what you think about this. What is your response? How would you improve this format? And I'll talk to you in the next one. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Have a great day.